So an overview of the session this evening. This evening we'll be discussing what the current standards of conduct, performance and ethics are, and we'll also outline what the proposed new standards will be. And this is with a particular focus on existing health conditions and disabilities. Then we'll also go on to cover some post-consultation activities. Before we do that, what I'd like to do is talk about the role of the Health and Care Professionals Council. So hopefully, coming to the session tonight, you're aware that we are a regulator. We're one of the regulators in healthcare in the United Kingdom. We have the unique position of regulating 15 different professionals. And we have a sort of a dual function, if you like, to protect the public, but also to maintain the confidence in the professions that we regulate. So at the heart of our mission is to do that by upholding high standards in the professions that we regulate. So you've got the diagram there on the left-hand side. So what does this mean in practice? So the HCPC seeks to achieve regulation, so quality assuring education and training programs, maintaining and publishing an accurate register of professionals and setting appropriate standards. We also have a function in responding to fitness to practice concerns and, where necessary, taking action to protect the public. So the learning section that you can see there, the HCPC harnesses data to have really informed insights about the impact of our processes and to take that learning to improve our regulatory activity, future approaches and our decision making. So we use what we know from learning and also collaborating with others to promote positive and inclusive professional working environments. And then turning to this preventative action side, the HCPC develops an approach based on preventative action. So we use our learning to address and reduce the conditions that contribute to service user harm. And this approach will hopefully support quality practice by being good at articulating expected standards, helping registrants to overcome barriers they face in living out those standards, and then reducing the need for unnecessary fitness to practice actions. And that is where the team that I work for with colleagues, the professional liaison service, comes in. So our role is really through education, influence, the promotion of professionalism and ethical behaviours to help current and also future registrants to embed and achieve high professional standards. And there are also other registrants that are in that team. So we do have quite a unique position, privileged position in the HCPC as being sort of in the HCPC, but also being registrants of the HCPC. So standards of conduct, performance and ethics. These outline what service users expect from you. And there are 10 standards. So standards of proficiency set the threshold standards that are necessary to protect the public. And each profession has its own standards of proficiency. And these are designed to set clear expectations of the knowledge and abilities you should have when you start to practice your profession. The standards for continuing professional development then is the way that you would keep your skills and knowledge up to date throughout your career. And these set the standards for your ongoing learning and development. And obviously there's lots of resources around all of this content on our website. The link for that is included later on in the session. So the standards of conduct, performance and ethics outline what service users would expect from you as a registrant. And there are 10 standards. So promoting, protecting interests of service users and carers, communicating appropriately and effectively, working within the limits of your knowledge and skills, delegating appropriately, respecting confidentiality, managing risk, reporting concerns about safety, being open when things go wrong, being honest and trustworthy, and keeping records of your work. So I guess the obvious question is, why use standards? So The HCPC has standards to support registrants to know what levels of behaviour, conduct and performance are expected to protect the public and to also protect the reputation of the professions and the individuals concerned. They're also used if someone does raise a concern about a registrant's practice. They're certainly not prescriptive. They're, if you like, they're a high-level framework within which you should practice. So it's not, if you like, it's not a sat-nav that will tell you exactly how to get somewhere, but it's more like the highway code that would explain the standards and the rules of the road, if you like. So it won't tell you exactly what to do in every given situation, and that wouldn't be possible for us as a regulator either, because we have sort of 15 different professions. So it'll depend on the individual circumstances how you apply the standards. And that's why we always say and go back to the need to use your professional judgment to assess what is safe and effective practice in your context. And I think that's it for me. So I'm going to hand over now to Rosemary.
Thank you, Hugh, and hello, everyone. I'm Rosemary Flowers-Wanjie, a Policy Manager at the HCPC, and today I'll be talking to you about some of the changes that we've proposed to the Standards of Conduct, Performance and Ethics, specifically those relating to registrants managing their health conditions and disabilities in the workplace. So I'll go on to the next slide and we'll look at the review to the Standards of Conduct, Performance and Ethics so far. So the review began in 2022 and the purpose of the review is threefold. It's to make any necessary updates to the current standards that reflect changes in practice and to ensure that the current standards are fit for practice, particularly taking accessibility and relevance into account, and to gain insight into how we can better communicate the standards and promote them to ensure that they are fully understood by registrants. So many of the proposals that we have published are based on engagement from stakeholders during our pre-consultation workshops and also an online survey that we hosted in summer 2022. The workshops that we hosted not only supported registrant understanding of the current standards, they also promoted a lot of helpful and prompted a lot of helpful and informative discussions concerning the standards. And through that quality engagement, we were able to propose areas of change relevant to registrant practice and also address current concerns. So these were held online and they were attended by a range of different stakeholders, from registrants to trade unions, professional bodies, and some people here may also have actually participated in those workshops. And we also ran a pre-consultation online survey during the summer, and that gathered information regarding stakeholder understanding of the standards. And again, it was another excellent opportunity to hear registrant experiences and concerns and also give people a different option of how they interact with us as well. The feedback that we received during our workshops and also on the online survey was analysed, and we identified a number of key themes for change within the standards. These you can see reflected in our drafting of the proposed standards and the consultation that we have published as well. We launched that consultation at the end of March 2023, and it will remain open for public response until the 16th of June this year. So this consultation period is really an opportunity for us to hear detailed feedback from all of our stakeholders on the proposed changes that we have made to the Standards of Conduct, Performance and Ethics, and also the guidance on social media that sits alongside it. So based on our pre-consultation engagement, we identified 5 main areas of change to the Standards of Conduct, Performance and Ethics, which you can see on the slides here. So they are equality, diversity and inclusion, communication, duty of candour, upskilling and training, and what we're talking about today, managing existing health conditions and disabilities in the workplace. We have also discussed sustainability as a possible future area of change to the standards of conduct, performance and ethics, and that will be our last consultation workshop, which will be going ahead next Monday, so I hope many of you will join. So each of our consultation workshops, as you can tell, is dedicated to exploring one of these themes. As I said, today we're going to be talking about managing health conditions and disabilities in the workplace. Before we do talk about the proposals in relation to managing health conditions and disabilities in the workplace, we want to hear from you about what changes you would like to see relating to managing health conditions and disabilities in our new standards of conduct, performance and ethics. So to contribute your thoughts, you can use slido.com. My colleague Rachael has put a link into the chat, and you can see the Slido posted here on the slides. So in order to do that, you'll go on slido.com and enter the code have your say. And again, we'll put that in the link in the chat as well so that you have that. We will refer to your contributions later on during the session, but just to be sure, your contributions are anonymous, and so yeah, please do feel free to share your thoughts confidently. And you can also enter comments into the Teams chat, as Hugh also said, but please do keep in mind that these are not anonymous and they will be visible to everybody else who's in attendance today as well. So moving on to the next slide. The standards of conduct, performance and ethics, as we talked about a little bit earlier, are split into 10 standards which break down into further detail. Here you can see the first part of standard 6, where our standards on managing health sit. And before we do go into detail about standard 6.3 and 6.4, I'd like to highlight the rest of standard 6, which closely relates to this topic. So these standards, standard 6.1 and 6.2, ascertain that throughout practice, all registrants are expected to reduce the risk of harm to service users, carers, and colleagues as far as possible. So that's standard 6.1. They also require that registrants must not do anything or allow someone else to do anything which could put the health and safety of a service user, their carer or your colleagues at unacceptable risk. That's standard 6.2. And these standards have not been identified as areas of change for the standards of conduct, performance and ethics, and neither in our desk review of the standards or during our stakeholder activity in the pre-consultation period were they flagged as an area of concern, and therefore no changes have been made. However, they set an important context for our standards on managing health, and as I say, they do sit within the overall standard 6 as well. And if you do choose to respond to our consultation, you'll find specific questions to help guide your responses and provide feedback to the changes that we've proposed. We also have a question where you can provide additional feedback. So if you have comments or suggestions for other areas relating to the changes to the standards of conduct, performance and ethics that we have proposed, that is a great place to share those thoughts with us. I just wanted to let you know about that. So going on to the next slide, you can see that the changes that we have proposed to the standards on managing health relate to standards 6.3 and 6.4. And these standards, as I say, they sit under standard 6, managing risk, and they relate to how we expect HCPC registrants to manage their health and disabilities in the workplace. Our proposed standard 6.3 states states the role that we expect registrants to take in managing the impact of their health conditions and or their disabilities on their practice. And our proposed new standard 6.4, on the other hand, discusses the actions that a registrant is expected to take once they have assessed their health condition or disability and found that their practice is being detrimentally impacted. Moving on to the next slide, talk about the feedback that these changes are based on. So these changes relate to our workshop and survey participants asking for more clarity around this standard. And we also often receive questions from registrants about what to do when a health condition or disability is impacting their practice, or if they're worried about their health condition or disability impacting their practice. With that in mind, the changes that we have made to Standard 6.3 make clear the responsibilities that a registrant has towards managing their health in the workplace. So, for example, you can see on the slide here the difference between the current Standard 6.3 and the new proposed Standard 6.3. So the key difference here that I just want to point to is the new standard requires registrants to take responsibility for assessing the impact of their health on their ability to practice safely and effectively. This change in language does two things. So firstly, it requires registrants to take an active role in assessing the impact of a health condition or disability on their practice. This focus on active language and making registrant responsibilities clear is similar to other areas of change to the standards of conduct, performance and ethics. For example, our standards on equality, diversity and inclusion, standards 1.8 through to 1.12, and also some of the changes that we are implementing in our standards of proficiency too. And secondly, by using the words safely and effectively in our proposed new standard, it ensures that our primary concern as a regulator is clear, which is, of course, ensuring public safety and the effectiveness of the care that service users receive. So during our pre-consultation activities, we heard from some registrants that the connection between our standards on managing health and also our fitness to practice procedures weren't clear. They were leading to a bit of confusion. And so we heard that this can sometimes result in delays to registration and distress for registrants as well. So to help remedy this, we've proposed standard 6.4. And that standard explicitly states, it's a new standard, and it explicitly states the circumstances in which we would expect a registrant to stop practicing. So this is only if adjustments made to ensure the practice of safe and effective care are not possible. This doesn't change the current requirements we have of registrants. Instead, the changes we have proposed more explicitly state and also align with the expectations that we've set out within our currently existing guidance. So when reviewing the current standard 6.3, we were careful to refer to the existing guidance that we provide registrants with on our website. So for example, on the HCPC website, you'll find several pages relating to health and character declarations. For example, how to make them and when you need to make one as well. So these pages clearly state the circumstances in which we would expect to be told about a registrant's health condition or disability. And you can see some of the wording here on the screen, and you can see that it directly relates to practicing safely. So it states that you should tell us about your health condition if it affects your ability to practice safely and effectively. You should also tell us if you're not sure whether your health condition affects or could affect your ability to practice, or what steps you need to take to stay safe and effective. Excuse me. So to better align with this guidance, Standard 6.4, the new standard that we've proposed, highlights that the purpose of any adjustment must be to enable a registrant to practice safely and effectively. And that it isn't only necessary for a registrant to stop practicing, and that it is only necessary for a registrant to stop practicing where adjustments to make practice safe and effective are not possible. And yeah, if you'd like to read more about our health declaration process and also the support available for registrants making a health and character declaration, you can refer to those online materials I was talking about earlier. My colleague has put them in the chat for you to refer to at your own convenience as well. So, as mentioned earlier, it really is great to hear from you in relation to these proposals, and that really is what the consultation period is all about. It's also what these workshops are all about as well. We really want to speak to you and hear from you as well and listen to your views about the proposed changes that we're making. So I hope that while I've been talking, you've been busy on our Slido channel sharing your views about the standards of conduct, performance and ethics, and specifically on managing health conditions and disabilities in the workplace. We will be coming to those comments shortly, so do be active in telling us your thoughts and sending over your questions. On the slides here, you will see some questions that will be available for you to answer in a poll that I'm just about to launch now. And the first poll is asking whether managing health conditions and disabilities in the workplace is an area of concern for you. So mine's just launching. It's being a little bit slow. I hope that it's popping up on your screens as we speak. And we should be seeing some responses come through. And yeah, do take your time just to also remind you that there really is no right answer to these poll questions. It really is, we want to hear your honest answers here. So that's great. I can see quite a few responses coming through, so got a varied response, so that's quite helpful. If you want to expand upon your answer to the poll, then please do use the chat box. We've got currently 50% of you are saying that managing health conditions and disabilities in the workplace is an area of concern for me. Oh, that's just shifted to 45%. You've got 27% saying sometimes it's an area of concern from you, and 27% saying no, it's not an area of concern for you. So perhaps those are some of the people here that we've heard from who are representing others, or perhaps it just isn't a concern for you. But yeah, like I said, please do expand upon your answers in the chat, in the Teams chat, or even in the Slido if you prefer, if you want to get that anonymity, or if you just want to really you want to use a different application. So the next question in our poll, that should come up on your screen again, and that asks, are the suggested changes to 6.3 and 6.4 clear? This is a really important question. I've been leading on the review to the standards of conduct, performance and ethics, and honestly, in the work that I've been doing, it is so helpful to hear your sort of reactions and your responses to the things that we're suggesting and proposing. So please do answer this poll. I can see some of you have already, which is really great. And so far, we've got most people saying very clear or sometimes clear, which is good to know. Those people saying sometimes clear, it's really helpful if you can tell us the places in which you think it's the proposed changes aren't clear. So yeah, do pop that in the chat, or perhaps if you like to put that in the Slido, you can as well. Just so yeah, right now it's 50-50 between very clear and sometimes clear. It's just shifted again. Can't keep up with you. That's great. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in those polls. I'll just have a quick look at the chat before we move on, see if there's anyone who's in there. I can see a lot of people are introducing themselves at the beginning. That's really helpful and really great to see. I'm so glad. So I can't see anything in the chat at the moment, but as I say, please do put your questions in there or expand upon your answers to the poll questions as well if you have something that you'd like to tell us. And yeah, thank you very much for participating in that. So also, please do remember to respond to our consultation as well. Responding to the consultation, as I said earlier, it really does give us the opportunity to hear from you and to know what you think about the proposals. And it really is an important part of our process of updating the standards of conduct, performance and ethics and ensuring that, you know, that they're easy to understand, that they're accessible and that they're also easy to put into practice as well. As much as possible. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to those changes. I've just seen somebody in the chat saying most disability related discourse mentions reasonable adjustments. I think it would be better to introduce an element about reasonable. That's helpful to hear. And what the language we've used, as you've seen in the standards, doesn't refer to reasonable adjustments. And part of the reason for that is that we regulate 15 different professions, so we don't want to be too specific about the different adjustments that people do need to make. What we have focused on is what the purpose of those adjustments would be, and which is in enabling safe and effective practice, where that might not be possible in other ways. But yeah, please do keep contributing to the chat and keep contributing to the Slido. And again, please do respond to our consultation. We really do want to hear that detailed feedback about all the proposed changes that we're making to the standards. Okay, this is an interesting one. So, would including requiring registrants to seek appropriate help or support when appropriate help will support them to make changes to how they practice? So I'm just going to make sure I understand that. So would it include requiring registrants to seek appropriate help to support them to make changes how they practice? Certainly. I think that that's really important for a registrant to do, and that's part of the activeness of making sure that you can make adjustments to your practice to ensure that it's safe and effective. It is seeking that support that you need, notifying, for example, notifying your employer and notifying your colleagues if they can help you to make adjustments as well. And seeking that support that you need to make those adjustments. And like I say, in our online materials, we do say that to get in touch with us if you're not sure about what adjustments you need to make your practice safe and effective. So that's another avenue of support that you can rely upon. Okay, so I can't see any other questions in the chat right now, but we will come back to it later. For now, I'll hand over to my colleague Rachel, who will talk about our next steps in the review, and we'll also have a discussion about what we've heard in the Slido chat. I'll come back for that. And then Rachel will bring today's session to a close. So thanks.
Thanks very much, Rosemary. And hi, everybody. I'm Rachael, Gledhill, Acting Head of Policy and Standards. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, that's okay. I was getting a bit of a delay on my camera there, so hopefully I've caught up with myself now. So yeah, thanks. I'm going to talk about post-consultation activities. So if we can move to the next slide, please, Hugh. Thanks. So as Rosemary mentioned briefly earlier, we received feedback during our pre-consultation activities that whilst the standards are accessible, some stakeholders may benefit from more explanatory materials for those standards. So as you see in the slides there, we've proposed setting up a pre-launch explanatory materials design group And what we really want to do with that is for members of the group to be able to read the final standards and provide advice on the explanatory materials that would be helpful for readers who are, for example, living with disabilities or are neurodiverse, or where their English is their second language. We also want to establish a pre-launch reading group to further meet our commitments towards equality, diversity and inclusion. This group will be set up to ensure that we understand the potential impact of the new standards on people with protected characteristics. The group will be made up of people from a variety of backgrounds, such as people of colour, people with disabilities and international registrants. And members of the group will read the final standards before their publication and provide us with what I'm sure will be really valuable feedback. So I'm really glad that we're going to be able to do this as part of this process, because I think it's a really important and valuable resource for us. Next, thank you. So we've got a slide here which just sets out the next steps for us after the consultation is finished. So once we've collated the responses, we do hope to launch the new standards in autumn this year. And to understand that the new standards are fully disseminated and understood widely, we will have a significant implementation period for a year. So we aim for the new standards to come into effect in September 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I think it's really important that during this phase of implementation, we want to keep the conversation about the standards of conduct, performance and ethics going. So our activities in the implementation period are going to include further workshops with registrants and other stakeholders, so that we learn more about what meeting the new standards will look like in practice. We also want to focus this period on ensuring that education providers, our internal teams and our registrants are really ready for the standards to come into effect in September 2024. And it will allow our internal teams and our education providers to really integrate the new standards into their materials, processes and also into their curricula effectively. Next slide, please. So before we close today, we're going to have a look at what you've all been posting in Slido. I think Rosemary is going to come back and join us for this. Thanks, Rosemary. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Rachel. And yeah, thank you very much for telling us about those different activities. We've got quite a bit of chat going on in the Slido. So that's great, everybody. Thank you so much. There's an interesting comment here that talks about how clarity is difficult when so many registrants work in different contexts. And it's about managing registrant expectations and where that overlaps with HR procedures occur as well. And I think that's a really important point to make. When we have been drafting these standards, it is a challenge, honestly, to draft them for 15 different professions. And even within those professions, people are working in different contexts. So it does make it challenging, but that's also why these standards aren't prescriptive. And so I can understand, sometimes people are asking for, very specific examples of what they're experiencing, and the standards aren't likely to answer those questions for them without that using your professional judgment and your understanding of the standards to come to that conclusion yourself. Obviously, you can also ask for support from us, from your professional bodies and from your trade unions as well when you do have specific questions, but it really does for me highlight the importance of coming along to these workshops, coming along to the workshops that we'll have in the implementation period and things like that as well, to really understand how to put the standards into practice for you in your contexts. Yeah, so I found that really interesting. And I'm just going to take another look at some other things as well. And so someone has asked for us to make it clear what you need to disclose and in what circumstances. So I really do want to point you towards our online materials. Again, it's about our standards aren't going to go into a lot of detail about the specifics of what you need to disclose and what circumstances you need to make a disclosure or a declaration, a health declaration. but we do provide that information on our online materials, and so that goes into a little bit more detail. So it's important to recognise that sort of relationship between the standards of conduct, performance and ethics, and also our guidance and our online materials as well. Though those pieces of guidance and online materials, they go into a little bit more detail. There's examples, and that applies across the standards as well, not just in relation to standard 6.3 as it currently stands, and standard 6.3 and 6.4 as we've proposed. And again, this is kind of another way in which the sort of different context and your professional judgment comes into it as well. So one person has asked about how is risk to service users framed or measured, and again, we can't know the context that you're working in, and so that's why we've pointed to the words safely and effectively, and also in 6.3 we talked about that active language in terms of how you as registrants assess your own health, and the impact that your health is having on the safety of your service users, and the effectiveness of your care as well. So that is really, that risk is something that is important for each individual registrant to assess using their professional judgment that they get from the standards, from our guidance and from our online materials as well, that are there to support you in building that professional judgment. So just take a couple more minutes to have a look, and please do keep contributing. The Slido chat is still open, and yeah, and please do also keep your questions coming in the chat as well. And so I'm just going to read another question here in the chat. So this question is, will the impact of the changes be published so the direct effects or not on registrants can be assessed? So that is a great question. And if you go on to our the documents that we've released alongside our consultation document, you'll see an equality impact assessment. And that equality impact assessment is there for the standards of conduct, performance and ethics as they're currently proposed in the consultation. And there's also an equality impact assessment for the guidance on social media that we've also currently proposed in our consultation as well. And that is really where we've assessed the impacts of the changes on registrants, and also other groups as well, the other so for example service users, and we've specifically gone into detail about protected characteristics and how that will impact different protected characteristics. So I think the person who answered that question will be really interested in those two documents, so go take a look for sure. And of course we will also keep that conversation going as well, you know, throughout our implementation period during our workshops. They're going to be interactive just like this. We want to be hearing from you on our chat and on our Slidos and things, and hearing about the impact that you're experiencing as registrants, or the registrant representatives are seeing the impacts as well, and the impacts on the sort of care that you give to service users. It's hard for us to see that without actually hearing feedback from you. So yeah, the more that you engage with us in this process of updating and things like that, the more we'll know. So now there's another comment on the Slido as well that says, specifically relating to 6.4, that they think that adding the words "in your current role" would be helpful. And they've pointed to the fact that some people's roles can't, you can't do, but it doesn't mean that they're not. Some roles people can't do, but it doesn't mean that they're not working safely and effectively. And that's a very helpful comment, and it's I love it because it's detailed as well. It really specifically refers to what you want to see in the standards, and I really want to stress that it would be really great if you could go and do a response to our consultation and include that in there, because that is one of the main ways in which we're going to hear from you, in which we're going to be able to include your suggestions in our analysis when it comes to us looking at how we can further draft the proposed standards before they're finally published later in the year in autumn this year. So yeah, please do. The more that we have those kinds of suggestions, specifically about specific words that you want to see, different ways in which we can phrase different standards as well, that's the kind of feedback that we really appreciate in our consultation responses. So please, the person who wrote that, take some time to look at our consultation and form a response to it as well. It would be really good to hear from you. And there's just seeing if there's any other questions here that we can have a look at. I can't see anything coming through right now. And I do see one comment that reasonable adjustments is enshrined in law. And our standards do refer to keeping being aware of the different laws that apply to you, and also making sure that that you abide by those laws as well, work within your legal remit and things like that. And so yeah, that's one of the ways in which we include those things. And and as I said earlier on, we haven't used the word reasonable in our standards. We didn't find that necessary, but if you do feel that you need to see that word again, please do let us know in the consultation responses, and also let us know why as well. That sort of explanation can be very, very helpful to us in kind of understanding your perspective and about what's important to you for you to see in the standards. Okie dokie. So I can't see any more questions coming through on the Slido. So I'm going to hand over now back over to Rachael to lead us to a close. And if anything does come up in the meantime, Rachael's going to tell you some things, some ways in which to get in touch with us as well. So please do that. And I cannot stress enough to come and respond to our consultation as well, please.
Thanks very much, Rosemary. I've just seen as well, there's just a point in the chat about the temporary register. So I can just touch on that briefly. I'm not aware of the detail of the temporary of when we sort of set the temporary register up. That kind of predates my experience, but I do know that the temporary register is subject to different sort of legislative rules. So there are different parameters around registration on the temporary register that do apply, that are not sort of relevant to our permanent register. So it is a slightly different position to the permanent register. But yeah, now I'd just like to talk about just to move on from the standards of conduct, performance and ethics, and draw your attention to some sessions that we have on the recent updates to our other standards, the standards of proficiency. These include a webinar on equality, diversity and inclusion on the 23rd of May at 1 o'clock. We'll have a session on leadership on the 7th of June at 1 as well, and a session on digital skills and new technologies on the 19th of June. So some lunchtime sessions available there for you. You can sign up to any of these My HCPC Standards webinars on our website, and Rosemary's popped the link in the chat for you there. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just to really reiterate Rosemary's comments, thank you everybody for joining today. It is really good to get this this level of feedback on the standards, and we do hope that you will also go on and respond with your detailed comments to the consultation. If you do have any questions or you would like some further information, please do get in touch. Rosemary's put her email address on there, and also we've got a general policy email address for you, and we also have a number of ways for you to get in touch with us. So yeah, please do share your thoughts. So thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks everybody. Goodbye.